Let's expand on this story now. Advocate Brenda Madumise, who's Director for Wise for Africa, joins us to further this discussion. A very good evening to you, Advocate. Thank you so much for your time. Let's talk a little bit about getting your reaction to this latest Imbizo. I mean, police expressing their concerns again around the staggering amount of crime against women and children. What are your thoughts around such an Imbizo? I mean, we're seeing men coming together, trying to find solutions. How effective are such Imbizos?
I mean, you know, firstly, the engagements must happen and must happen across all sectors of society in this country. So the Imbizos, there's absolutely nothing wrong with calling an Imbizo, but it's the content of that Imbizo. What are you trying to hope, and what is the content at that Imbizo? What message are you trying to convey? If you are not going to address the structural drivers, because you see, if we are going to be flippant about drugs being the cause of gendered violence, rape, and sexual violence, or being unemployed, then we have missed the mark, because there are men who are employed who are abusive towards their partners and sexually abusive to their partners. So let's not be flippant about what is at the core of the structural drivers of gender-based violence. And the National Strategic Plan on GBV has literally set out the structural drivers of GBV. Chief amongst them is how society has, for the longest of time, viewed women and address and attends to women, right? So when you have men socialized in a way, like in your clip where someone says, I'm unemployed, and when you are a man, you're supposed to be taking care of your family, and you harbor that view and that socialization that has brought you up and made you to think that you are a man because you have to take care of someone who can take care of them because they are your possession, and that you have to control them. That's why it is easy for you then to move to violence, to beat them up, to take away their power and control because you think you can, because you are the head of the family. So those conversations must happen at that minute level, because I think we are glossing over these issues, and we can call an Imbizo and just keep on lamenting when we don't go deeper into how we are all socialized to believe that women are inferior and are supposed to be protected. Protected from who? Because really, the message that has to go out is, this is your partner. This is someone who has got rights like you do. This is a human being in the first place. You have got no right to lay a hand on her or him or whatever. You can't. You got no right to accost her in the street, or to try and touch her unwanted and make her uncomfortable. You've got no right at home to take a child and decide to violate that child, right? And it goes deeper into our value system, right? On why is it that we think as older men it's okay to take and sexually violate a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old, even a baby.
So how then do you structure some sort of framework to begin to change the societal perceptions? I mean, these are deep-rooted perceptions from birth, from community influence, from other men talking. How do you begin to change the narrative and have a structured, strategic intervention that speaks to these matters?
So that's my point around the Imbizos. What is the content of that Imbizo? Are we just having a conversation for the sake of having a conversation and ticking a box that as the South African Police Service we conducted Imbizos in the 9 provinces, not dealing with the deeper content and the impact of those Imbizos on on the attendants who will be part of those Imbizos. So for me, is what is the message that we are trying to convey to South African society around how this society treats women who are a equal partner in this country, an equal partner in this society, right? Where you have to grapple with your own socialization that for years has placed you in a position of power and control, and that's the only language that you understand, of power and control. And when you have a society that accords rights to women, you then think that it's not appropriate, and women should be subjugated, right? So for me, is that these conversations are not happening at the level that they should be happening. When the Minister of Police says women are under attack, right? Mm-hmm. And he is not addressing even his own views that he holds about women, right? Mm-hmm. And what the police themselves, when you approach them at the police station, how they view women, because throughout this country, victims and survivors of gendered violence, just talk about physical abuse and domestic violence. When you go and report it at the police station, that you will be advised in most times that you should go and you should try and settle it. Yes. And the police become social workers to try and stop you from proceeding with a crime, reporting a crime against someone who has physically abused you. So if we trivialize the extent of the problem that we have in this country and keep on brushing it off and not bring out into the open. And here's what I would advocate for. Mm-hmm. So the minister releases crime stats every quarter, and we all raise our hands because we can't deal with the magnitude of the problem. If you've got 700 rapes in just one area in Mpumalanga, imagine what is happening in the entire country. So once the minister decides to release the crime stats, what we need, together with the minister, when those stats are released, is the Minister of Justice giving us a report on what happened with the previous quarter cases that have been reported, right? Yes. So that we can track where there is progress being made in whether convictions, and is the Minister of Justice, but then you have the Minister of Social Development, the Minister of Health, talking about the health and the welfare of victims and survivors of gender violence and rape, so that people understand the trauma visited on victims and survivors. Because one of the things that we don't do in this country is to talk about the trauma that is visited. We expect victims and survivors to work on our timeline. We must tell them when to report their rape and how they should report it, and if they took long, they're lying, and all of those things. So that compounds the problem. And in fact, what you see with the stats from the SABC, it's a drop in the ocean of what is actually happening in the entire country, because most victims have decided not to report, right? Because they have seen what happens to them, that there is secondary victimization on them. So for me, is that you also have to work on prevention interventions. You, along this parallel with your prevention interventions, is that you need to strengthen your criminal justice system. We've got a very, very flawed criminal justice system in this country that needs to be strengthened, that needs to be supported, that needs to be resourced, and really spent getting top-notch investigators in these cases, get top-notch prosecutors who are not going to have endless postponements around these cases. We have labs that are functioning, that can test DNAs swiftly, quickly, without any delays. So all these things must run parallel. At the moment, you've got one port of excellence at this corner, and then you've got a mess on the other side, and there's no coordination of this work that is massive in this country. So we're going to get shocked every time this SAPS releases the stats, because we are not getting the comfort as South Africans that there is progress being made. All that we see is the fear in the eyes of many women who can't walk the streets freely, who are too scared in their own homes, and they've got nowhere to turn, because no one is going to believe them. Yeah. Even when they report it, it takes another year or so for that justice, for them to see any justice, if any.
Advocate Madumise, you've said a mouthful. We thank you so much for your time and sharing that insight. Advocate Brenda Madumise, who's Director for WISE for Africa, joining us there to help us make sense of what needs to happen to fight against gender-based violence and femicide, and of course the structure and framework needed to ensure that those numbers go down.